the penultimate session that we have of the 2021 Waterwise Speaker Series is our guest, Dornak from the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment. He was instrumental in, along with a lot of other people, but he's the primary spokesman, I think, for the Wimberley One Water School. And he's here to make a presentation on how that came about and some of the benefits that we've seen from that. And so welcome, Dornak, our guest tonight.
Give us just a minute. I think we all want to get out.
Yeah, we all want to see it.
The audience.
It's a nice spring. I'm just going to sit right here.
It's fun.
Not bad. Popcorn.
Well, thank you all for inviting me this evening to hear this talk. And some of you may have heard parts and versions of this. We've certainly, as Charlie said, this is the penultimate talk. I think that this has been one of the penultimate I've lost my train of thought. My penultimate accomplishments, that's the word I'm looking for, of the Cypress Creek Watershed Protection Plan in partnership of our stakeholders and others working together to this point. Of course, the Jacobs Well Management Zone was no small task either, and that was a much larger group. But I want to talk a little bit about some of the conservation design that went on with our One Water Primary School, but before I do, let's kind of set the scene a little bit. As Charlie mentioned, I'm Dornak from the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment. Probably you have seen some of these types of models. Hill Country Alliance, this is from their website, looking at the regional growth model as it was in 2010. You see the changes to 2100, and it's pretty daunting. Captured right in the middle of that is Wimberley Valley and the Cypress Creek Watershed. And what does that mean, of course, for places like this, iconic Jacobs Well? It's a pretty daunting situation, I think, for many folks in the Wimberley Valley, for you, the groundwater district, trying to manage some of these threats. As you know, you deal with the impacts of drought, things you can't necessarily control or not without a lot of institutional work. Lower flows, increased temperatures, reduced water quality. You've got things that in some ways humans can control, growth and development. What does that mean? Increased pumping of groundwater, more impervious cover, you've got more stormwater flows, pollution that comes from those kind of things. And ultimately, declining groundwater levels. We've seen the PFCs, we know we're using up the water faster than it can be replenished. And it's, looking at these things and trying to think about, the regulatory environment in which we live and the development pressures and things like that, and also needs for, housing and affordable housing and equitable society. How do we balance all of that stuff? And it can be extremely daunting. And I recently watched the movie, Captain Fantastic. I don't know if you guys have seen that. The guy takes his kids off to the woods, and instead of Christmas, they have Noam Chomsky Day. And this was a quote I pulled, and I heard it in the movie, and I was like, I'm going to look into that a little bit. But I think about this, and it's inspiring, because basically, you have to have hope. In the absence of hope, you guarantee that there is no hope for the future. So I think that's why we're all here. I think we all believe that there are things that we can do, things that we can affect that can have a positive impact. And I think one of the greatest examples of that, of course, was in response to when Jacobs Well stopped flowing in 2000. The community effort really led in large part by the Wimberley Valley Watershed Association and others to develop the Cypress Creek Project and the Cypress Creek Watershed Protection Plan. This is a little out of date. We're a few more years past 10 years, but I like this graphic because it shows how many people have to come together to make something like this work on a watershed scale or a regional scale? But it was a lot of optimism, I think, going into this about what we could do. Developing the Watershed Protection Plan, I think many of you know or are familiar with those efforts to preserve flow and protect water quality, simply stated. We hope to ensure the long-term integrity and sustainability of the Cypress Creek watershed for future generations. I think that's why we're here, and that's why we continue to do what we do, and that's why we have the passion that we have for the work that we do. The Cypress Creek, of course, gets its flow and its source from Jacob's Well. You have the iconic Blue Hole and Blue Hole Park. And back in 2018, right between these two iconic hill country destinations was the idea that Wimberley was going to build a new primary school. And what did that mean? Well, it meant conversion of native range to developed site. It meant stormwater impacts to the ephemeral tributary that flows through the site. It was destined to be a standard construction type school, basically built on, ongoing principles of construction. What that really meant to me was it was going to be using around 20 gallons per student per day of potable water. And what did that mean for our aquifer and for our spring flow in Cypress Creek? Also, the wastewater from that school was set to be connected to Aqua Texas' system. There was really the only thought about what we would do with our wastewater that we produce here is make it go away. We don't want it here, let's make it go away. The water supply was going to be pulled from Aqua's wells and from the Cow Creek Aquifer, the source of flow for Jacob's Well. All of these things, in my mind, meant a missed opportunity. So what do? Just make a little history. We talked about this concept of one water, and I think it's starting to become more part of the vernacular of what we hear in the Texas Hill Country. I'm glad to hear more people using this term, thinking about this term. And this graphic does somewhat decent job of trying to put it all together. But basically thinking of all of the water that is collected, all the water that is produced on a site or in a community, think about that together and think about how we can best and most efficiently use that valuable resource, which is really, one of the scarcest resources when we talk about development out here in the hill country. So how can we be more efficient? That is where One Water really comes in. And I can talk to you about all the things that we've done at the school. But first, I've never seen it done quite as well as these kids did.
It's exciting to know all the things that we've done here at Blue Hole, but especially what we're proud of is our One Water system. And we have an awesome group of young men and young ladies, our second grade AP class, is going to explain to you exactly how this system works here at Blue Hole. So excited to see this.
The water in the tank is rainwater. The water in the tank is started with Blue Hole Primary is used to water the grass and trees in front of the building. The gutter is right over there to bring the water into the tank. This is about our limestone blocks. Our drinking water comes from the underground water. Then comes inside the water supply, like this. See how it's easy? Pervious and impervious. Pervious allows water to sink in. Impervious just rolls off the side. We have pervious and impervious on the sidewalks when we walk in. Now we try to do close water so it sinks in.
You wasted no water in this.
And on this side, right here, just runs down, doesn't sink in. And so that side is called impervious, so it's impervious because it just rolls off and down, sinks in to the aquifer. The vegetated filter strip slows down stormwater. It helps allow water to sink in. It also slows down erosion. It stops bad things before they go to the groundwater. It also helps less flooding. See how there is not that many curbs in this parking lot like this one? That's because the parking lot is in an angle so the rainwater can go to the grass and sink in. Firefighter supply tank. The firefighter supply tank holds more than 200,000 gallons of water. It's big, skinny, and it's tall. It's designed for the firefighters to know that they can use it. This water is only for firefighters. It feeds the fire hydrant and fire sprinklers, and it has hose connections. This is the Watershed supply tank. It is the lower and wider one. It's lower so gravity can help the water get into the tank. And it holds more than 200,000 gallons. And it collects rainwater. And as you can see, there's purple that it's from the purple pipes. The purple pipe is rainwater. Probably gives us a shout out, it's not potable water. Potable water, non-potable water means you can't drink it. A blue hole, purple piping said it was caught here. Rainwater lands on the 78,000 square feet roof and is also caught in AC condensate. There's 84 ACUs. The water is stored right over it. It comes here and then it gets heated. This is the plumbing window. All the pipes are color-coded to what they need. Red is hot and potable water. Blue is cold and also potable water. They are both architects' groundwater. Yellow means ventilation. Green is gray water, and you can also call it dirty water. Purple is rainwater and AC condensate, also known as site harvested water.
The Blue Hole Primary was built with STEM principles in mind. It uses science, technology, engineering, and math to immerse the students in the experience. For instance, this is a rain tube. When it rains, you can see the water entering into the system. This water winds up as a site harvested supply, and that's what's used for flushing the toilets here.
Thank you to the designers. Thank you to the construction workers. Thank you for all the engineers that helped to make the plans and help to build the school. Thank you, builders. I want to thank the community who supported us. I wanted to thank the businesses that worked with us. I want to thank to the school board for helping us. And thank you to the administration. Thank you! Thank you so much, boys and girls, for showing us around today. And thank you, Robin, from the Wimberley Watershed. We hope you enjoyed our tour and enjoy our schools as much as we did. It's beautiful.
Hey Nick, is this available for anybody's website?
It's on YouTube. So you
So I can link to it?
can link to it, Google it up, anything you'd like to do.
It's on our Facebook.
Might be on Facebook.
It's
So
on our Facebook.
I would say that that little video warms my heart every time I watch it. When you think about the fact that these kids, that was just the first generation of kids that has been exposed to that school, and how many are going to go through there every year is what really grows. And to be immersed in that kind of environment and building, I don't think there is a better way to educate our kids, and that was why I was so excited that we could do this and demonstrate One Water in the way that we work at a school. and a school for our youngest people too. Second graders getting these concepts right. I mean, if only all of the citizenry of the Hayes Trinity Groundwater Conservation District had that kind of concept of what needs to be done and why it's important. I think that there is good reason for hope. But this is beautiful. I think one thing I was upset with the kids about, they didn't talk about our on-site treatment system. So I'll show that to you here, only here at this meeting. But in addition to the collection side, I mentioned the wastewater was intended to be just made to go away. Go down a pipe, send it to Aqua Texas plant, potentially go on the golf course or whatever it's going to do. We looked at Jacob's Well and some of the other schools in the Wimberley district. Look at their sewer bills, quite high to get rid of all of that water. And then they weren't putting it to good use. We came up with a concept, working with David Van our engineer, to put in a packed bed recirculating gravel filter system at the site and create an athletic field that the kids would not have had. So a nice green field for them to play on, for the community to use. Those are in short supply in Wimberley. Great way, the subsurface drip irrigation, also a way to keep that effluent underground. So if there's any, certain concerns maybe about bacteria or things like that in the water or nutrients, made it as safe as possible and as efficient as possible. And that is beneficially reusing up to 5,000 gallons a day. I think what we're looking at now is probably around 3,500 gallons per day, what they're actually using at the school, 3,000 to 3,500. Keeping that field green. That has been a little bit of work on the maintenance side of this once it's been built, but it seems to be going pretty well now. This is a plumbing window that you saw in the video. The rainwater and HVAC condensate is the primary source for all of the toilet flushing in the facility, and this happens to be one of the most significant potable water uses in any kind of new facility, and especially at school. You think about how many kids are flushing those toilets every day, right? So the biggest gains that we get from water efficiency, we're using that site collected water to flush toilets. And we did a pretty deep analysis, I think around 35 years, looking at historic rainfall to design and size our system, which is really important, so that basically this, we would have site harvest and supply in every condition that was realized in that recorded time period. So, some years you have wet years, you don't need as much storage, but when you have dry years, you've got to really take advantage of the storms when you get them. So trying to right size these systems, both from a conservation standpoint and economic standpoint, is really critical. We did our best to be maximum efficiency at the school. And our original cost estimates when we presented to the board, the amount of water that they're saving and not having to purchase on the supply side, and the amount of sewer bills that they're not having to pay. We looked at that versus the operations and maintenance of our one water system, and that came out in 2018 dollars to around $800,000. You adjust that for inflation, and it will easily be over $1 million that the school will save on water costs and maintenance costs versus their conventional system, which was a huge selling point. There was still the capital infrastructure costs, but we had a situation in the capital infrastructure where the school was going to have to put in a lift station to get their water to Aqua Texas, which was not going to be a small task. So being able to put in that on-site system basically eliminated that need and made the economics work out very well for this school system. I think we're still maybe a little bit in terms of designing these systems on other facilities. We have to. People are going to have to start looking at longer-term costs if they want to realize the savings and value of these, just in terms of financial. But at Wimberley, it made sense right away. The benefits of bringing all of this together, of course, great benefits for the school district. They've definitely been able to serve as leaders of the community as the school was coming to be, and understanding why, what are the important things about living in the Wimberley Valley. Of course, saving water has got to be right at the top of the list. The community, we've got a living lab for integrated water management. We just recently got the metering system online, so I don't have a lot of hard data to show you, but we just got the electronic metering system online that's going to be keeping track of all the water that's being produced, collected, and treated on site. And I will talk to you about that just a little bit in a couple of slides. But we really look at this facility as not just a great accomplishment of construction, but the research potential for what we're going to be able to pull and prove out these systems will be huge. And for the children, of course, I mean, living in that, we've got school gardens and really try to integrate a lot of outdoor classroom work into the One Water concept and education for the kids. And I think that it's certainly paying dividends. The next step, once we finalize all the educational signage and things like that at the school, is going to be, we've had early discussions of the master plan for the entire site that the school district purchased. So the potential to bring in other developments and tie them into our system are the types of things that we might see out there. That will incur some permitting challenges from TCEQ and others. So we're looking at this certainly as a long-term development plan, but we would love to see this entire site be a model for how you can develop an entire, mixed commercial industrial site in One Water. One Water for the Texas Hill Country. These are a few of the projects I'm involved with. There's a lot more going on out there. I mentioned the metering system that just was put in the last month, but we'll be having an online dashboard where you can go on and see the actual water usage, print out and query data and develop charts and graphs. One of the interesting things I'm really looking forward to finding out is how much condensate we're actually capturing and creating there on that site. We're estimating probably 1,000 gallons a day from all of those air conditioners, right? That's almost enough potable water to flush all the toilets. I mean, that's almost enough water to flush all the toilets, excuse me. So we've got really interesting research potential there, like I said, on that. The Wimberley Village Library, they're in engineering design phase right now. That expansion of the library will be a One Water expansion with green infrastructure and on-site water captured for toilet flushing. The Blue Hole Park and Nature Center, if you've been following the Parks and Open Space Bond, you'll know that Blue Hole is proposing a pretty substantial nature center. The goal there, of course, is for that to be One Water, and the potential for the majority of water right now being produced within the city of Wimberley, we could divert to Blue Hole and use it there on the park and on the sites. So we're engaged in a study right now that was funded by Hershey to look into the feasibility of that. That's going to be it's going to be a challenge with Aqua Texas and the city of Wimberley, but the city of Wimberley is on board to take this study seriously and consider a future that could see much of the water produced in Wimberley being reused at Blue Hole Park. I've worked with Austin ISD to review their design manual for all the schools that they'll be building in Austin. We're going to see more schools in Austin being built with these same principles that we had in Wimberley. Lake Travis ISD and Comal ISD are also engaging in conversations with new bond projects coming up. I was really hoping that this school could set an example when people's eyes are opening. A lot have been contacted by a number of school board members from other communities. We've got tours set up. Finally, COVID has certainly slowed that ability down to bring people into the school and see it. But it is we've got a big group coming in October that's going to be touring the school, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'm also right now mediating the Blanco Water Reclamation Task Force. That effort so far has really focused on no discharge options for Blanco and looking at land application for their effluent. But our phase 2 study that we'll be embarking on soon will be looking at a one water pathway for the entire community. So as they develop in the areas surrounding Blanco, can we create maybe decentralized communities with on-site treatment and wastewater managed by the city and regulated by TCEQ, but instead of having massive infrastructure projects to bring them all into one centralized place and treat it at the wastewater plant and potentially see that go into the Blanco River, let's see that beneficially put to use in medians and lawns and things like that. So we're working with Aqua Strategies on that and Protect Our Blanco group, and we have a couple of city council members and public works director and new city administrator for the city of Blanco on that task force with us. And so things are looking very positive there in Blanco. And of course, I just want to give a shout out to my good friends and colleagues, Joe Day, David Baker, David Van Huysen. We were kind of the one water team to get this thing going, and this would not have been possible without those guys. We had great institutional support, got buy-in from the engineers and the architects for the school, and generous funding from Harry Willett to help push us over the top to get the school board to approve this project. And of course, one of our early accomplishments was the 2020 Rain Catcher Award by the Water Development Board. And that's it. That's me. So thank you very much. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, I've seen some of this before, and it's just exciting every time I see it. How much publicity has there been outside of the Hill Country area throughout the state and nationally, and how much response are you getting outside of kind of the Hill Country area?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it's certainly been a lot of focus from the Hill Country, a lot of local news, interviews from Austin and San Antonio we've done. I wrote a piece for the Green Schools Network, which is a national network that featured the school. We call it the first one water school in Texas, but I'm not sure if there's a school anywhere in the country that put so many of these concepts together in one place. And but it's been one of the toughest things for me has been watching this project, and as much work as we put into it. The last 10% of the project has taken longer than the first 90% of the project. So getting some of the metering in that we can actually show some of those results, getting the educational signage in, and those online dashboards and things like that. It's very difficult because most of the contractors are already almost paid out now, and there's so much pressure on these developers right now. And contractors, so it's hard to get the last little pieces done. So I've been a little hesitant, but it's overall, of course, it's just a great story. So we do the best we can telling the story.
Nick, I get calls once a month at least, and sometimes once a week, and I bet you do too, Garrett, from developers who are interested in whether the aquifer can support some different size of development or not. And so I direct them to the school and primarily to you, because you're the only person I know who to send them to. Is there a facilities director that would be better to send them to?
At the school district?
Yes. Or would it be best to send them straight?
I think either to me, and Robin Gary has come in since she became managing director of Wimberley Valley Watershed Association, and she'd be also an excellent resource. She's done a great job promoting this. I've kind of moved. I'm always moving. I'm like, what's my next thing? But Robin has done a great job of really helping to put that video together and really trying to bring in some of those the STEM learning opportunities at the school. So she'd be an excellent resource as well.
So institutions like a school seem to be the optimal messenger for this type of deal. Have you done any studies on whether it's scalable to a neighborhood scale, or a
Right.
business park scale, or a mall.
Well,
or
you
any
know,
other applications.
Absolutely. Well, you know, Lunch Shell has been certainly trying to promote some conservation, type development in Hays County. I think for me, we saw the school as kind of pilot project A. We're hoping that we can prove this out in Blanco. That Blanco can be that next community to show the next step. More than just a building or a group of buildings, but can it, let's say a new subdivision, they've got a mud application that came in last fall. Can that subdivision be the decentralized wastewater, one water conservation development? And that's what we're looking into, but there's so many. The regulatory system it's hard for them to envision this, right? So how do you permit these types of things has been difficult. Generally, TCEQ is pretty willing to help, but we'll find out a lot more probably in the next 6 months as we embark on this One Water Pathways study that Aqua Strategies is going to be working on with us, and that's Barney Austin out of Dripping right here. So his group.
And that's specifically for the city of Blanco?
It's for the city of Blanco, yeah. So as they see new developments coming in, are they going to be able to put them on a pathway to more of these types of concepts in their future growth and development. And sometimes, I mean, you've got to play that. You've got to the economics of it all, right? So I think a lot of places what we'll probably see is still some, maybe we get some decentralized wastewater, but we're still connected on potable city water. But we need to find ways, and especially regulatory pathways, to make rainwater more usable from a legal standpoint, I think. Why, again, I think with proper treatment, it's very easy to treat and be able to drink. There's a lot of folks here with potable, fully potable rainwater systems, right? So just putting that on a larger scale and getting that through that bureaucratic process is really the next big hurdle. Vanessa Pugh-Williams put that Meadows study together on regulatory impacts to One Water, or hindrances to One Water. So there's certainly some chapters and rules that might need to be amended and rewritten if we want to see this as a full-blown new way to live. But I don't think that 20th century type development bodes very well for this region. I think we all know that, and we're going to have to be innovating and thinking about better ways of doing things. And generally, it's interesting because this was kind of the way it was done a long time ago, right? You made do with the resources you had, and I think there's been a lot of life's gotten pretty easy for folks, and we've gotten pretty comfortable in the way we've done things. So just overcoming those social hurdles, I think, is just the biggest hurdle. But when we're seeing and demonstrating places like the school that can make it work, I think that eases that. So it's the social acceptance is really where I'm trying to work right now.
There's a big new luxury green development being planned in the far north part of the county. Marisol development, and they are really talking up the green aspects of that development. I don't have any idea what that really means, but I wonder if you've engaged with them to let them know what's possible.
They're absolutely. I haven't engaged with the folks that are doing that development directly. I've been out to Roy Creek, which, oh my gosh, I don't know if you guys. It's privately. It's on a little private ranch. I'm not supposed to. Anyway, but it is a beautiful spot and just pristine. That's that's horseshoed by this Marisol Springs development. And the impacts to that creek, I think, are really, it's going to be telling how well Marisol can actually make this happen. One thing about Marisol that's different than what I'm used to dealing with is instead of, proposing to do, 1,000 quarter-acre lots, they're trying to do more luxury lots, right? And so it's not quite as frightening to me as maybe like a large residential development in an environmentally sensitive area. But there'll be a lot of other impacts. There'll be stormwater impacts. Honey Creek is an interesting example there, where Honey Creek Ranch was going to be doing one of those high intensity developments, and Parks and Wildlife, it looks like hopefully they're going to be able to purchase that property and create a park to protect Honey Creek. But we can't do that. What's that?
Who's doing who's going to purchase it instead of
The Atlantics, or the family that we're going to develop it, and they've reached a deal with Parks and Wildlife to let Parks and Wildlife purchase it. But that's that game of whack-a-mole where you can't do that everywhere, and we need more institutional change. I do think that the message is getting through to Marisol. The extent to which they're going to actually adopt it, I'm not sure. They plan to put the UT Research Center out there as kind of a commitment to their environmental stewardship of the property, and I think that's good. And so it's one that's, it's right close to Hamilton Pool, and everybody's concerned about that, certainly concerned about how are these, luxury lots, are these people going to accept brown lawns, or are they going to expect to have polo fields and things like that? And so but again, we don't need to, there's other ways to water those fields and other ways to provide those kinds of things. I think where things are really coming down, and I serve on the Greater San Marcos Partnership Conservation Committee, how to balance conservation development with this need for affordable housing, and that, and how do you thread that needle? Because that's very difficult, unless people are willing to accept a different type of home, I think, and lifestyle than we've gotten used to. And so those are, again, more of those social things that we have to work and break down barriers and try to hopefully get people to see things a little bit differently. It's these little gentle nudges that happen. It's slowing down that freight train or turning that freight train.